Hello, folks. Thanks for joining us again this week. Just like always, my name is Jim Reid. I'm going to be your host. I've got a kind of a special message to start off this episode of the podcast. This is a special edition of the podcast. In 2024, we released a series of podcast episodes based specifically around each month's mixed game of the month in our home game club at RecPoker. And it was a big success. And we've continued to play a lot of those mixed games in our home game club, even in beyond the year 2024. So we thought one thing that would be kind of a neat idea would be as those games come up from month to month in our home game club, we would just re-release some of these mixed games episodes from that series in 2024. So some of you may have heard this episode before, but because the subject of this episode is going to be the game that we're playing next month, we thought we would just kind of send these out as a bonus episode. So if you have heard already, we've tried to add some new tips from guests onto the end of the show. We won't be able to do that for every episode, but I think it might be worth re-listening to. There are some great tips on how to enjoy some of these mixed games every month that you'll hear these. And if not, yeah, dig in. I think, we should all be playing more mixed games. There's a lot more to poker than No Limit Hold'em. So I guess without further ado, I hope that you jump in, join our home game club. It's free to play, but the prizes are real. And like I say, give some mixed games a try. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So we're gonna just roll right into that. You'll hear that episode again right now in its entirety. Thanks for sticking with us, and I look forward to chatting with you next week on the Rec Poker Podcast. All right, folks, if you like that tune, just you got Peter Trulin to thank. Peter, thank you again for putting that together for us here on the Rec Poker Podcast. I am so pleased to be here because I've got the best freaking job in the world. If you don't know, my name's Jim Reid. I'm Bluff Serini in the home game and at Rec Poker Jim on Twitter. And I get to hang out here with my poker friends, talking about this great game that we love here on the Rec Poker Podcast. This is a special edition of the podcast. We're talking about the feature mixed game of the month. But we'll get into that in just a second. First, I have to mention that we're brought to you by the Running Aces, the official sponsor of the Rec Poker Podcast. And most of what we do here is free. We're a largely volunteer-based organization, so we really depend on support from our sponsors and our premium members who take advantage of our fantastic training material and study opportunities for only $15 a month. And if you want to join us, you can get your first month for only $5 by using the code RecPoker at checkout. But we also have a fantastic free community with home games, forums, Discord, strategy videos, study opportunities, road trips. I'm just scratching the surface. There's a ton of free resources for poker lovers at rec.poker. All it takes is an email address and a smile to sign up, but we do insist on both. Now, you might get used to hearing my voice because they let me host the show on Mondays, but I am just one of the wrecking crew, which is what we call our leadership panel over here. It takes a crew to make the magic happen here at Rec Poker. And if you want to find out more about me or the rest of the wrecking crew, you can go to rec.poker/crew, or you can listen up because you're about to meet a few of them right here tonight on the show, starting with our own John Somsky, the home game director here at Rec Poker. John, take it away.
I'm John Somsky, also known as Poker Geek MN everywhere, and I run our home games.
I'm Rob Washam. You can find me as Rabman50 just about everywhere. And you can join me and a bunch of our other Rec Poker Premium members every first and third Wednesday of the month when we discuss the latest poker book.
And I'm Taylor Moss. You can find me on Twitter at Taylor_Moss or as Gopher Boy TJM in the Rec Poker home game, which I stream live on Wednesday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Central at twitch.tv/RecPoker.
That's right. And speaking of home games, they're just one of the perks of our free membership. We do a different mixed game of the month every month in 2024 on the second Wednesday of the month. You can play and compete with the rest of our members in the mixed game of the month player of the year race. And so, because I know a lot of our listeners are No Limit Hold'em players, we're trying to drag y'all kicking and screaming into the mixed game streets. And so we're releasing a mixed game episode every month, just focusing on the game that we're going to be playing next month. So next month, that game is Limit Deuce to 7 Triple Draw. And so we're going to talk about that game today. We're going to get some tips from some experts. And then there's going to be some practice mixed games in the home game club that you can play leading up to when the tournament next month starts for all the marbles. So if I've done the math right, this episode comes out on Tuesday. Tomorrow night should be the third Wednesday of the month, which will be the first mixed practice game for Limit Deuce to 7 Triple Draw. And then there'll be another one next week before we get together next month to play for real on the second Wednesday of the month. So, John Somsky, you've put this fantastic slate of mixed games together. Tell us a little bit about Limit Deuce to 7 Triple Draw.
Well, back in February, we played No Limit Deuce to 7 Single Draw.
Got it.
This is very similar to that. It's also similar to any of our other limit games. So it's limit instead of no limit. As you can say, when you have Deuce to 7, that should let you know that it's a low ball game. So the worst possible hands win. Because it's called Deuce to 7, that's because Deuce 5 4 3 or 7 5 4 3 Deuce is the best possible hand in this game. That's why it's called Deuce to 7 versus Ace to 5. That means straights and flushes don't count against you. So you do not want to straighten this game. You do not want to flush, but you do want all of the lowest possible cards. It's played as a 5-card draw game. So everyone is dealt 5 cards. There's a small blind and a big blind before the first betting round. So everyone's dealt 5 cards. Then under the gun will begin betting. You bet and call all the way around. It's just like any other limit game. So typically the raises will be capped at either 4 or 5 raises, depending upon the room that you're in. And you have 3 draws that go on that. So pre-draw, you bet. Everyone draws, and you draw in order. So it'll be the person right after the dealer discards the number of cards that they want. You can draw all 5 cards if you want to, but if you're drawing 5 cards, unless you were in the big blind and you didn't have to put any more money in the pot, you probably shouldn't be playing that hand. Or you could draw 1 or 2, whatever you feel is appropriate. The big difference between this and the single draw game, because you have pre-draws, the strengths of the hand in the end are going to be higher because you have 3 tries to get at it. Like I said, you have 3 drawing rounds. After the second and third draw, that's when the big bet comes into play. So the betting has just doubled from the first 2 bet games. In general, you need to have a strong hand to win this game. It will be rare that a jack is going to win it, jack high. A 9 will win occasionally, but you don't feel real confident with it. You really want to have an 8 or a 7. Although if you've got a 7, that's a really good hand. Even if it's a 7-6, you're sitting pretty good. The best places to start, it's awesome to start with both a deuce and a 7 in your hand. You're guaranteed if you have a deuce and a 7, you are not going to get a straight. And it kind of leads you into having one of the stronger hands. If you do not have a deuce and you don't have any 7s, you don't have either one of them, it's questionable whether you want to play. Now, I play those hands all the time, but I probably play more hands than I should in this game too. Other than that, we've learned all of the skills. You've played Deuce to 7 before. You've played limit poker before. You've played drawing hands before. So nothing here is new. It's just one more game to throw into the mix.
And is this another one of those games where we're sort of starting from the top, comparing hands strength? So 7-6 would lose to 7-5, even if there was, or like, 8-6 would lose to 8-5, even if the 8-6 hand had a higher lowest card. It doesn't actually matter how high your lowest card is. It matters how low your highest cards are.
Correct.
Okay.
So
I'll probably ask you that many more times as we get into these mixed games. But
a queen jack will beat a king 5.
right. Okay, I like that. Yeah, Rob?
Something that I notice when we're playing this in the home game sometimes, some people confuse the fact that ace is always high. And I see it happening. We get to they call a bet on the river or whatever, and they show with it, they have an ace. And they have an ace to a 7. They have an ace 7.
Right. Yeah.
And in their mind, they're thinking, well, how come I got the ace here? What's going on? So keep in mind the ace is always high. That's why they call it deuce to 7.
Not only that, but they also stood pat on the last draw.
Right.
Exactly. And I wonder what, and then you realize they flip it over and they have an ace in their hand, and you go, well, okay, they don't quite understand the rules. In online, it's very difficult to let them know. So you just okay, maybe they'll figure it out. A couple things. We talked before about how position is very important in these draw games. Hugely important, because you can you get a lot of opportunities to bluff your opponent when you're in position.
Mhm.
And let's say you have a 1-card draw. Let's say you're sitting there with a jack and everything's 7 or lower. That's not a good hand in triple draw. But if you're on the button and everybody else is drawing 2 or 3 cards, you could stand pat and bluff the heck out of them, especially on the last draw. So keep that in mind. Never draw 4 or 5 unless you're in the big blind. The only time you should be drawing 3 probably is if you try to steal from the button, or you're in the big blind and it didn't only cost you 1 bet to see the first draw. So basically, you're going to be drawing 1 or 2 most times. And one more thing, we played single draw. In single draw, jacks could be a good hand. Whereas in triple draw, it is never a good hand because you have 3 opportunities to improve your hand. In single draw, you only have that 1. So keep that in mind. And 8 is probably the best, the highest low card that you can usually have to guarantee a win without bluffing your way through it.
I like that a lot. Yeah, Taylor.
Yeah, I feel like it's easy to try and compare this to the no limit deuce to 7 single draw version that's out there, but there are a good amount of differences. Rob hit on some really good ones. In the single draw version, which we played back in February, there is a ton of value of drawing a low number of cards so that your hand can't be foiled after 1 single draw. So if you've got a jack high, you've got a 10 high, like those are decently good value hands to potentially pad on. Or, if you're drawing to a 9 high and you draw 1, that's a relatively good idea because you have 1 single draw. That is your 1 piece of information that you're giving to your opponent or you're getting from your opponent, followed by the last round of betting. But as you can imagine, with more draws, like John said, the strength of hands goes up. So you have to draw to those stronger hands. And like John said, if you don't have a deuce in your hand, nor do you draw to a deuce, the best possible hand that you can then have is an 86 if you don't have a deuce. So you've immediately deranked the potential of your hand. If you don't have a deuce or a 3, well, guess what? That now goes up to a 97, which is now your best possible hand. And it goes down quickly, where if you don't have a deuce or a 3 in your hand, it really doesn't make a ton of sense for you to be playing those specific openings or drawing to those hands. Having the 7, like John said, is good because then it keeps you from potentially foiling yourself by getting a straight. But it's really, really important to have a deuce or a 3, or preferably both when you're playing some of those hands. And then the other version, the no limit hold'em single draw version, it's tough to draw 2 and really like be in a good spot. In triple draw, it's 100% okay to draw 2 right away, to keep 3 cards, 3 good cards, and draw 2. And then hopefully on your next draw, you're only drawing 1. And then hopefully you can pat on the next one, or hit on the draw after that. Because you have so many draws, you have that prolonged way of approaching it. The only thing you really have to be cautious of is there's going to be betting in between those different draws, and how are you going to approach those different situations. But during the betting, that even adds value to, like Rob said, position is so insanely important. If you can be in position, you can always see what your opponent's drawing. You can always see how they act before you choose to act on that specific draw. You get to see what they draw before you draw. So you have, I believe, like 4 different instances throughout this game where if you have position, you're getting information before your opponent. It can allow you to make better decisions. So position, position, position is the name of this game.
And John, is this our first triple draw game of the year? I think it is.
Badoogie is also a triple draw.
Oh, sure.
Badoogie
Yes, good point.
was also
Good point.
a triple draw.
And so you get a sense of, I guess, similarly to that, then you kind of get a sense of, you can refine your read on your opponent's hand by the multiple draws, more effectively than you can from just a single draw as well. You can kind of chart the progress. Are they improving? Aren't they? And like you mentioned, that was it can affect the lines that you take, not only with your betting, but with your drawing, not only to decide whether to break something or not. And boy, I'm sounding like I know what I'm talking about mixed games now, breaking hands, and oh my God, holy cow, who's this pro? But also like whether to bet or not, because you can try and mislead your opponent to the strength of your hand by the drawing action as well as by the betting or raising action. So I think that's a really interesting part of these triple draw games.
Right. To go deeper from what you're saying, just to like add more clarity to it, like breaking a hand and like what we're talking about in some of those spots. Like say you have the button, you have position, and with your second to last draw, you draw to a 97. So you have a 9 high for a low, which is good, but it's not amazing. If your opponent had just pat, you have to be somewhat concerned around the strength of your hand when you drew to a 97. And your next draw, you probably should break the 9 and try and go for a 7 high for your low. If your opponent instead drew 2 and then you hit a 97, you should feel way better about the strength of your hand. What's the likelihood that they can beat a 97? And then if you bet and they call and then they still draw 1 on the last, great opportunity for you to not break your hand, mean not ditch the 9 to try and go for an even better hand because you have a fairly strong made hand. And then you can feel good about that spot. It's why position is great. It allows you that information to decide what should I be doing with my hand in specific spots.
And I mean, half the deck is high cards. So anytime someone's drawing, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to get a hand. They're going to get a card that fouls their hand. If you're playing, like a decent, even like you say, Taylor, like a 9 or a 10 high, a lot of the time you're, well, I don't want to say, is it like one of these other games, guys, where like if you're holding a jack high and they draw 1, then you're 50-50 with them or something like that? I feel like, John, you used a heuristic like that for one of the earlier drawing games, but I'm not sure it applies in this case specifically. I might be leading our audience astray.
It does. It does. I don't know where that actual breaking point is, if it's at jack or 10 or what, but you do need to be careful. You have to, if you don't have, you probably don't want to start off with, you want to have 3 cards drawing to a good 8.
Good point.
Okay. Don't play hands in general, unless you're in the big blind. Don't play a hand that doesn't have that, at least. You also need to be careful. I can't tell you how many times I've had a deuce through 5 and been drawing one card and pushing the action, and then I get the 6 on the river. You
Right.
know, so you think you've made your great hand, then you look twice and oh no, I've got a straight.
Right.
So it's gone from, you know, a worse than if someone got a pair. You know?
Right.
So and in this hand, you really cannot be confident at all you're going to win the pot with anything worse than a 9. I mean, even in slowly played pots where it doesn't seem like anyone has anything, a 9's probably going to be the winning hand.
Yep. And that kind of stuff matters because all the cards are hidden. So you don't have any sense of what kind of a hand your opponent has other than what they're drawing and what they're betting. So knowing sort of where the thresholds are for value hands feels like that's really important because you're mostly dealing with a black box of information.
Right. So to just draw another difference in Badoogie, if I'm dealt a Pat King out of the box, I'll often play that all the way down depending upon how action goes, and it's going to win some amount of the time, a fair amount. It's a plus EV play to do that.
Right.
In this hand, if you're dealt a Pat Jack, you never play it. You know, whereas in single draw you might.
Right. But
another difference, you have to get a feel for, and as you play, the more you play, you'll get a feel for where a good hand becomes great or really good or not so good or all that type of stuff.
well, you can see that, you know, having more opportunities to improve just means that the hands at showdown are going to be stronger. So that there's an obvious correlation there. That's really interesting. I love exploring these mixed games with you guys. This is so cool. Hard to believe it's almost November, and then we're going to be rounding it out in December with 8-game mix. So let's hear, unless there's anyone else has anything else they want to add to limit deuce to 7 triple draw. Let's see what some fantastic poker pros and celebrities have to say about what they love about this game and some tips of their own. Enjoy. All right, we're joined again by Bernard Lee. I'm so excited for this, Bernard. Give me some tips on how to play limit deuce to 7 triple draw.
Yeah, so triple draw deuce to 7 is definitely different than single draw. Single draw, you can have hands that aren't necessarily monster hands. And what I mean by that, a monster hand is really kind of like a deuce, a 7 or an 8. Those are really the hands that you really have to have. And again, I'm going to kind of repeat some stuff that I may have said before, but let's just make sure we understand what all these combinations are. The first hand, or the number one hand, or sometimes referred to as the wheel, is 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Okay, so that is the best possible hand, ergo deuce to 7. The ace in deuce to 7 is considered high, not low. It's high. End of story. This isn't its swings. It's high. So if you actually had a pair of deuces and someone else had a pair of aces, the deuces are going to win. Okay. So because we're playing low ball, remember. So understand that in stud, high-low, ace is king because it can go both ways. Well, that's how important a deuce is in deuce to 7. Why? You cannot make a 7 without a deuce. Okay, let's make sure we clearly understand that. I'm going to be very specific about this. There are only 4 7s that can be made. Let's make sure we understand the rules again. Deuce to 7, straights and flushes count against you. When you play ace to 5 low ball, they do not count against you. That's why you can have an ace 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a straight. But in deuce to 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 is a straight. Therefore, it cannot be a low. Therefore, it's 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. So then what's the next one? 2, 3, 4, 6, 7. Next one, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7. Last one, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7. You cannot have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's a straight. So please understand, for you to get a 7, you must have a deuce. People often, when they play this game, don't understand that right away. And they're playing and they go, well, I got 7, 5, 4. Okay. Yeah, but I have a chance to get a deuce, a 7. You don't have a deuce. What do you mean? You need a deuce. This isn't you had 2, 3, 7, and you could get 4, 5, or 6. You have 7, 5, 4. If you don't get a deuce, you're not getting a 7. Forget the other. You have to have a deuce. That's how specific it is. And also understand that the odds of other people playing, as much as when you're playing no limit and hold'em, the odds of someone holding an ace when they call is pretty high. Well, guess what? If 3 people are calling, at least 1 deuce is out, minimum, if not 2. So you're not really drawing the 4 deuces, folks. You're drawing the 3 at best. So you have to understand how important a deuce is. Have I conveyed this enough, folks? Deuce, huge, 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 huge. Okay. Okay. So deuce is massive. Okay. So there's 4 combinations for a 7. Now let's take it to another level. 8's 85. There's 1 combination. 8, 5, 4, 3 deuce. There's nothing more you can do. There are 4 combinations of 8 6s. Okay, so therefore there are 5 of those combinations. And then there are 9 combinations of 8 7s. So what I'm trying to show you is that 8 6 and better, there are 18 combinations. Sorry, 18. 9 combinations. 8 7, there are 9 combinations. So you can see how 8 6 and lower is so powerful, and how 8 7, I don't want to say is a bad hand, but it is not as good of a hand as you sometimes think it is. A lot of people think 8 7. 8 7s, unfortunately, are sometimes like death, because you get caught there looking at it. You get a 7, right? You get 2. Let's say you initially start out and you draw 2 4 7. Great starting hand. Now you get a 5. You're like, oh, just need a 3 or a 6. And then on the last card, an 8 slides in, and you think, oh, great, I got an 87. That's okay. Not as good as you think, right? It makes such a massive difference that you have 2 4 5 7, and if you slid in a 3, it would be number 1. If you slid in a 6, it would be number 4. But instead, now you have 8 7 5 4 deuce. We're talking probably like 14 or something like that, right? I mean, that's such a massive difference of where you have, and anyone with an 8 5 8 6 is going to have a huge advantage over you. So I really want everyone to understand how important a deuce is, okay? I also want you to understand that the straightening scenario is not a good thing. You know, some people look at it, they go, I have 8 6 5. This is phenomenal. I have 3 cards to a 7. It's not as good as you think. You know, you have to remember 7 6 5 and you get a 4. Well, now the 3 is dead and the 8's dead, and the only card that you can really win with is a deuce. And again, I told you, if we're starting out this thing, you're probably down to 2 or 3 deuces left in the deck. Some people get so excited when they look at 6 5 4 3. It's actually a horrendous hand. A deuce doesn't help you. A 7 doesn't help you. Literally, an 8 is the only card that helps you. So you have to be very careful when we're now in single draw. Those aren't as bad, because if you pulled a 9, you could win, right? That's not as bad. But in triple draw, because you have to be so tight, it has to be so good. In some respects, you have to relate it to Omaha in the scenario of when you are playing Omaha, you cannot be drawing to the jack high flush and think it's going to win. It may win, but you can't be like, I got a jack high flush draw, let's go. You really need to be trying to drawing to the nuts, right? You want to be drawing to the ace high flush, the king high flush, right? And even king high flush, as many of you know who play Omaha, that's the death of it all too. And that's a lot of what 8 7s are in deuce to 7. Okay, triple draw, not single draw, okay? So I want to make sure you understand that. So let's go through these numbers one more time. 4 7s, Okay. In total, there are 5 8-5s and 8-6s, and there are 9 8-7s. So in total 8s, there are 14 8s. Okay. Then if you go to 9s, there are 34 9s. Okay. So you can see how drastically it shifts over, right? To get dealt a perfect is 2,500 to 1. So that's not happening. Okay. It's pretty tough, right?
Yeah.
So pretty tough to get that. So, but it is just something that for you to kind of think about. With regards to drawing, you definitely want to draw as few cards as possible. I would say 2 is the most you want to. You could draw 3 if you have the perfect 2-7, maybe 2-3, maybe 2 wheel cards. But the only time you really want to do that is 2 situations. One, if you're really like big blind, maybe if there was a limp and it comes to you on the button, okay. Another weird scenario is if you were dealt 3 deuces and a 4. And why I say that is, guess what? They can't have a deuce, right? So it makes it a very interesting scenario that you look at it and go, well, maybe if I pick off a 85, that's probably the nuts because they can't have a 7, right? Again, these are just things to think about. In that line, there is something in triple draw or deuce to 7 that's called snowing. Okay, I'm going to give you that kind of quick reference. Snowing is saying that you have so many good low cards that obviously they can't. If you got dealt 4 deuces, no one can get a 7. It's physically impossible. Physically impossible. So you know that if you push it really hard, that you're representing that you have a 7, they're probably, even if they have an 86, they may, if they're really solid players, they may have to let it go. If people don't know how to play the game, they look at an 86, they have no idea what you're doing, they'll still call, but that is a possibility, okay? Snowing is not easy to do, and it has to be a very specific situation. I've seen people try to snow when they had 3 4s and 2 3s. Not necessarily always the greatest case because that's great, thank you. But now I have 2 3 5 6 7. I didn't need a 4, right? That kind of thing. Okay. So the real big ones are the deuces and the 7s for the snowing situation. Okay. Let's talk a little bit again about position. It's absolutely critical in position. Deuce to 7 triple draw, the betting goes pretty. If you play in a triple draw game where everyone knows what they're doing, it is a combination of 2 things. It is one of the fastest games you'll play, but it actually ends up being one of the biggest betting games in limit because there is very little checking. Rarely do you have check in a round. Rarely. Because when that happens, somebody has the lead. So as we start this whole thing out, someone raises, pre-draw, someone raises, call. They will draw. Often the person will have a card lead. In other words, they'll take 1, other people will take 2. When you play this game, it's blindfolded. You just bet. You don't even look. You don't have to look at your cards. I have a 1 draw. You have a 2 draw. I have an advantage. Bet. It's not really even a continuation bet. It is you have an advantage. Bet. So it's a very easy thing. Bet, call. Okay. Next. Draw. So there's very little checking when it comes to it. And so that's why when you play this game, and if you play it in a tournament setting, later on, you cannot get involved in a hand unless you're ready to go, because you are just going to lose so many chips so quickly because you're going to have to put in the full amount of bets. This isn't a 7-card stud where you may be able to check around. You cannot check. You will not check around. I promise you, you will not check around. So once you commit, you're going. You've got to go. Talking about position one more time, it's paramount in this game. The reason why it's paramount, ironically, is not as much in the first or second draw, but obviously the last draw. So like the first draw, if someone called and I called from the small blind, remember we have 3 draws. It's absolutely irrelevant what they are going to draw. If I have 2, 4, 7, I'm throwing away 2. It doesn't matter what they're going to do. If I have 2, 4, 8, it doesn't matter what they're going to do. I'm going to throw away 2 and I'm going to draw 2. So position in that spot doesn't matter. Okay. Often what happens is you put down your 2 cards. The dealer doesn't give you them. He goes around the entire table first, asks what everyone wants, makes a determination, says 2, 1, 2, 1, basically how many cards, and then slaps down the 2 cards, pushes them forward. In old school, they would slap the cards down and then slide them to you so they didn't flip over. In today's world, a lot of them, they like pitching them. Doesn't matter, but it's absolutely critical that you don't actually flip over a card, because this is obviously a cards hand down game, not card up game like stud. So, as I said, the first and second draw, typically it doesn't matter. The reason why position matters more is the last draw, whereas let's say there's 2 people left. This is where it becomes similar to no limit deuce to 7, where, okay, and let's go over those rules. Jack, Pat, or Jack, you have a Jack low versus a 1 draw, 50-50. Ace king versus a pair, similar. If you have a queen and a 2 draw, and by the way, if someone's drawing 2 in that scenario, please tell me so I can go to that game every time and play against this person, because I will play against them all day and night. It's amazing when you see it. You'll still see it. But the point of it is that you want to make sure that you're in position in that so that you can tell. And so sometimes you will win a deuce to 7 triple draw with a 10 on the end. You'll pat it down. You'll check it down, right? You won't even think twice about it. But think about that. You're out of position. That person takes 1 and you look down and you have a 9. Why in the world would you draw? You're a favorite. So then you can sit there and you can pat. That doesn't mean you have a 9. You could be representing an 8 or a 7. Again, you're in position. So typically what will happen is the person out of position will just check. And then you'll just check back and you'll flip, I have a 9. Did you get it or not? If they lead out, well, that's your choice. You're going to have to make a decision. Are they bluffing? Or do you have to reluctantly be like, oh, I call, show me that you caught the 8 or 7. You know what I mean? But typically people who donk bet out there, they're not donk betting out. Because obviously you could have an 8 or a 7 too. Who says that you don't have an 8 or a 7? You in your mind know that you have a 9, but the way you played it, you could easily have an 8 or 7. So typically people don't donk bet out there unless they have the absolute underline bold nuts, right? I mean, like, why would you do that? There's no reason to do that. I've seen it happen. And then I've had like basically number 2 and I go, really? All right, I raise. And then they reluctantly call and they flip over 8-6 and you're like, really? Really? There was no thought that and his response was, I thought you were bluffing. I go, oh, well, not wrong. So like you don't necessarily think that you only have what you have. Okay. So that's why position is very important. Again, you want to be drawing smoother, not rougher. To reiterate what smoother means, you want your 4 cards below your high card drawing to a perfect hand. So you would rather have 9, 7, 4, 3 deuce as opposed to 9, 8, 6, 5, 3. Because if you throw away the 9 in that situation, you're drawing to an 8. The other way, you're drawing to a perfect. Okay, so that's a smooth. To have a rough hand, you don't want a rough hand. You obviously want smoother hands. In earlier position, you want smoother hands as opposed to later position where you could potentially have rougher hands. Why? Well, especially if they've all folded to you and you're on the button and you look down at a rough hand, but it's a, 8, 7, 6, 3 deuce hand. Yeah, it's not the best hand in the world, that kind of draw. 8-7-5 deuce draw, whatever, or 8-7-4. That's not a great hand, right? You still got straight possibilities, but because you're up against the blinds, I mean, who says they even have a hand, right? So at least you should have an advantage in that point. Let's relate it to no limit hold'em. You're on the button and you look down at ace-4. Normally in early position, ace-4 ain't that's not the stone cold nuts. But now that it's come around to you on the button and everyone's folded and you have an ace, that's a pretty solid hand at that moment. It's not great under the gun +1, but on the button, I'll take it all day and night, right? And then that kind of thing, right? So even king 10, king jack, something like that in early position, you're wary of getting into trouble. But now that you're on the button, now suddenly, hey, this is not that bad of a hand against two random blind hands, okay? So that's primarily with regards to a lot of the advice that I would say with regards to triple draw. It is, without a question, a very, very interesting game, a very, I don't want to say scientific game, but a lot of the decisions in triple draw are automatic, right? This is the hand I have. You really want to understand the starting hands. You do not want to be starting with straight draws. You don't want to be starting with the dummy side of the hand. You don't want 7-6-5. That's not what you're looking for. You really want to have that deuce. And that's kind of, once you get that, once you understand the starting hands and understand how to be, then it's just almost automatic. Bet, 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 bet. Give me 2. Bet, bet, give me 1. Bet, bet, bet. Well, give me 1. And it becomes but if you don't understand those dynamics and you don't understand the basic fundamentals of that, you're going to throw away money left and right because you're just going to be chasing stuff that's just pointless. I've seen a lot of people who have 8-6-5-3. Sorry, 7-6-5-3 and go, well, I was drawing to, a great hand or 7-5-4-3. I've heard this many times. I was drawing to the nuts. Okay. You had a deuce, right? A 6 gives you a straight, you're done. And an 8, you might not be winning. You might be drawing dead with an 87-5. But a lot of people don't understand it. They don't understand that. They'll sit there and they'll be like, I was drawing to the nuts. Okay. You were drawing to the nuts. Right? And for people who don't understand what I'm talking about right now, rewind the tape, listen to it again, understand why. 7-5-4-3. Yes, if you get a 2, you have the nuts, but go through some of the things we talked about. After the first draw, at least 1 deuce is probably out. So you're not drawing to 4, you're drawing to 3, maybe 2. If you get a 6, you now have a straight. If you get a 8, you now have an 87-5, which may not be that good, right? It might be like the 14th hand or something. So you really aren't drawing to an incredible hand. You're drawing to a 2-outer. If you think about the world of now, if you had, change it, 2, 3, 5, 7. Now you could draw 4. You could draw a 6. Now you have 8 outs. Okay, let's say a couple of them out. You have 6 outs. 6 outs is very different than 2. Very different than 2, right? And so, yes, it is still a small percentage, right? Every card is 2%. So if you have 6 outs, that means you have a 12% chance to draw it. But maybe you're drawing for it twice, and so therefore it's better. But if you're just drawing to a deuce, please call me and I'll add you to my home game. So, but that's deuce to 7 triple draw. It is definitely a scientific, kind of limit hold'em versus no limit hold'em kind of thing. 2 completely different games. I will be very honest that I have worked diligently on my triple draw game because I am a no limit deuce to 7, I would say specialist for better or worse. That's the game that I really feel intuitive about, whereas triple draw did not come as intuitively. And I've worked very hard over the last 3 or 4 years and hope to play in more of the events at the World Series. I have played in the it was Badoogie, Ace to 5, Deuce to 7 triple draw event. It was a three tournament event. I played in that a couple times. I actually enjoyed it. The Deuce to 7 and the Ace to 5 were relatively easy for me. It was ironically the Badoogie that kind of hurt me, and I've worked on that side of the fence as well. It's very funny because if you actually think about it, in the world of Badoogie, it's very similar drawing percentage wise as Deuce to 7. So if you think about it, there are 13 hearts that are left, right? Like you need a heart, right? You have Ace Deuce 3. So of the 13, there are only 10 left that make sense, right? So you can't hit an Ace Deuce 3 heart. So you got to hit 4 through King of Heart. Well, let's take away 10 Jack, Queen, King. So you really have to hit 4 through 9. Okay, that's really all you can hit, right? So there were 10 left, you took away 4. There's only 6 left. Well, isn't that the exact same thing as what I just talked about? If I hit a 4 or a 6, there's 1 4 out, 1 6 out, there's 6 left. I don't know why I hit the 4 6 much easier than hitting a specific heart. And it's just ridiculous, right? If you think about it in those terms, it's absolutely ridiculous. It's the exact same thing. Number wise, it's the exact same thing. So if you think about it mathematically, which I'm a very math oriented person, it doesn't make any sense. But I will tell you, it seems so much harder to hit a heart than to hit a random 6. I'm just telling you the way I feel. And that's why I like Deuce to 7 a hell of a lot better than Badoogie. But so be it. But hopefully that helped all of you guys with Deuce to 7, triple draw. Another great game as well, and hope you enjoy it and hope you pick up this game as well.
Awesome. That was fantastic, Bernard. I love talking to you about this stuff. It's very natural for you talking about this. I can tell. I know you've done it a lot, and you're very familiar with the material, so it comes through.
Yeah. So for better or worse, that's just kind of, I've done it so many times, etc. Having done, it is a lot of fun to do it. Unfortunately, so I don't know if you know a little bit of what's been going on with me, but I basically have, I still do it. I still have my show. I haven't released an episode in a while.
I was going to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long story. So I will say it. Are we recording? Can we stop the recording?
Yeah, let me stop the recording. All right, Chad McVean, give us some advice on how to play limit Deuce to 7 triple draw.
Deuce to 7 triple draw is actually probably one of my favorites of the mixed games. A good tip that I find for my own play is if I'm in the blinds, I just need to have 2 cards that are between Deuce and 7 in my hand to start with. You've got 3 draws, but you're going to get a good scene. You've already got money in the pot. When you're outside of the blinds, have 3 cards to start with that are between Deuce and 7. And that way you have a better look. Being in position also is really important because you'll be able to see how many people have drawn ahead of you and have an idea of how strong their hands actually are. You surprisingly enough, with it being a limit game, you can definitely bluff a lot in this game. One other tip, if you're playing this live and there are many players in it, seeing the flop, the dealer is going to probably run out of cards. So there'll be a shuffle of the muck. What that means is all the cards that everyone threw away are now being shuffled up to be redistributed. So in that situation, being first to act actually is better because there's a better chance of you still having those original cards before the muck has been shuffled in.
I'm just going to follow up with one question there. So do they shuffle the muck when they have run out of cards or when it's clear that they will run out of cards?
When they run out of cards.
So it really does benefit you to go first in the order, yes, because you're going to actually hit the back end of that original deck rather than everyone else's rejects, essentially.
Definitely, yeah. If you have 5 people to the flop and you're going to see like the second round of betting and there's been a lot of discards, you are going to get that muck put into the hand again. And that's all the cards that people have thrown away. So it is better for you to be early to act in that situation.
Great tip. Thanks, Chad. All right, Chris Fox Wallace, give me some tips on how to play limit deuce to 7 triple draw.
We'll start with the same thing that we talked about in Badoogie. If you're going to draw 2, flat. If you're going to draw 1, raise. If you're pat, raise. Right? If you're opening, obviously you're always raising. They're almost never a game where I recommend people open limp when they're playing limit. That's crazy. But 3-bet those 1-card draws and those pat hands, and if they're not good enough to 3-bet, throw them away. And flat those 3-card hands, and if they're not good enough to to flat, throw them away. Let's see, what else do we have here? I've got a bunch of notes on this game. Breaking, remembering to draw a lot of cards is also important. The value of drawing a bunch of cards. I see people frequently, this is a mistake I see like in the 2040 and 4080 games here in Vegas. They will get like a pat 8-7 against a fairly tight range where they get 3-bet, and especially if it's like an 8-7 5-3 deuce or something, right? You have a potential draw to the nuts against a tight range where you might be drawing dead, and you should actually be breaking it. I see people show down 9-7 in those spots sometimes, and like, you have to break that. Right, I'm a big favorite drawing to a 7-6 against your 9-7 5-3 deuce. Right, so you have to break those hands, and drawing a ton of cards is really valuable in these games. So if you're drawing 3 to a 2-3-7, right, you're always never leave home without a deuce, and then have a 7 if you can, right? A deuce in your left pocket and a 7 in your right is the way to leave the house if you're going to play this game. And playing a 7-3 is much crazier than playing an 8 deuce, but the 7 deuce is nice if you're going to play a 3-card hand.
All right, Kathy Chang, give me a tip on how to play limit deuce to 7 triple draw.
Limit deuce to 7 triple draw is a really fun game, and I love it because, well, for one thing, you're playing 6-handed, so you have a lot of extra elbow room, which I love, and a lot more play. So the goal in deuce to 7 triple draw is to win the worst hand. You have 5 cards, and you can draw to complete your best 5-card hand. And the best 5-card hand in deuce to 7 triple draw would be deuce 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. And to achieve that, you would want to always have a deuce and try to always have a 7 and maybe 2 or 3 of these other low cards, because that's the way that you can make the best deuce to 7 triple draw hand.
Okay, Mike Patrick, give me some tips on how to play limit deuce to 7 triple draw.
All right. Well, the one steadfast rule that has always been in play with limit deuce to 7 is do not leave home without a deuce. The deuce is the most powerful card in this game. A lot of people think that the 7 is equally as powerful. It really isn't. You can't make the nuts without a deuce. You can only make, like, I think it's the 9th strongest hand or something if the 3 is your lowest card. So you're really handcuffed if you do not have that deuce. In late position, you can get away with a little more, but you do have to be playing the hand aggressively. It's the same as any poker game. You can open up your range in more in late position because you've got less hands to get through. So you can open a little wider in late position, but just recognize that if you get played back at, that you are going to need to be careful. If you're, patting like a 9 or a 10 or something like that, if you've got something that is strong relatively against the blinds, but is going to be vulnerable to draws. So your best bet is to just, have those strong hands, have that possibility to make a really good hand because you have the deuce, because you have the 3-4. Just be careful with the higher cards in there. Start from the bottom up, and definitely be trying to make that deuce 3, 4, 5, 7.
All right, Norman, Chad, give us some advice on how to play Limit Deuce to 7 Triple Draw.
Limit Deuce to 7 Triple Draw, fascinating game. And it's, again, the best low hand is 2, 3, 4, 5, 7. Aces are high, they're bad. So this is no straights, no flushes, deuce, 3, 4, 5, 7. The deuce and the 7 are the most important cards. When you hold them, you know that obviously other people aren't holding them. So you get 3 draws here. So you're more gambling players, they'll draw 3 with 2 to a wheel there. They'll draw 3 certainly with a deuce and a 7. They'd love to draw 2 with a 2, 4, 7, a deuce, 5, 7. So again, you want to be drawing to a 7 or an 8. You want to have as many 7s or deuces that you've seen as possible. You can do something in this game called snowing, which is pretending you have a made hand when you have nothing. Like you might draw 1. You might have like deuce, 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 7, 7. And so you have 3 deuces and 2 7s. And so you just pat, and nobody else is going to have a wheel. So you might get away with that. If you're playing against really, really, really bad players, you can't get away with that. They're going to call you down on anything. They're going to call you down with a queen jack. So don't try to do that against anybody in my family. But yeah, it's a great game. As usual, you want to figure out at the end of the hand, you want to have an 8 or a 7. Usually nothing else is going to win.
All right, Robbie Strazynski, give me some advice on how to play Limit Deuce to 7 Triple Draw.
Don't leave home without a deuce. If you're holding on to however many cards, let's say you got a 3, 4, and a 5, don't draw to the deuce. You're basically, deuce is fickle in the strongest hands. Give yourself the opportunity to get those other cards, but start out with that deuce. If you don't have a deuce, when you're done, there's 4 of them. If you don't have a deuce, wait till the next hand.
All right, Shannon Van Den Berg, give me some advice on how to play Limit Deuce to 7 Triple Draw.
Okay, thank you. I love this game. First of all, never, ever limp. If you're playing, you're raising. Simple as that, whether it be the opening raise or your 3 betting. Don't draw to straights and flushes, and remember that the 8 is always high. Okay, so even if it's a 1 draw and you've got 2, 3, 4, 5, all of the same suit, it sounds great. You just need a 7, but a 6 or a flush card or a low pair, like it's just throw it in the bin. Initially look for 2 draw hands, and by that I mean the hands that you just draw in 2 cards to. So like 3, 4, 5 is going to play much better than like your 8, 7, 6 and things like that. So and snowing is not for the weak and those with heart troubles. So if you're going to snow with deuce, deuce, 4, 4, 7, then just don't give up on it. If you've decided that's what you're going to do, then do it. It won't always work, but you've got to throw some snow into your game. Absolutely.
All right, well, that was another fun conversation about mixed games. My thanks to, of course, the Running Aces Hotel, Racetrack, and Casino for their support over the years. To John Somsky and the other members of our Wrecking Crew panel here talking about their love of mixed games, and all our fantastic guests who contributed their segments, their thoughts and tips and advice on how to get the most out of some different mixed games that we're going to be playing. So I'd encourage you, head on over to rec.poker, sign up for a free account there. You can go to rec.poker/home-game and find out all about the different mixed games that are being played throughout the year, a different one every month. And I would encourage our listeners, if you're a No Limit Hold'em player, dip a toe into some of the mixed games. You'll be surprised how much fun you can have. So without further ado, I'll just say thanks for joining us for another week of the RecPoker podcast. And I hope I get to see you all again next week or sometime real soon. Good luck on the felt, folks. Thanks again. Bye for now.